Looks fake.
Okay, well, I haven't really told this story before, so here goes. Oh, introduce me. Yeah.
Okay, well, we are here. I guess before we get to the introductions, now is a good time for everybody to mute their microphones because we are going to be recording this for anyone who wasn't able to make it tonight. So I have a little cheat sheet here so I can see whose microphones are not muted.
What's that scritching noise?
Looks like maybe somebody's writing or something. Okay, so if we could ask the following people to mute their mics. I see Brenda, if you wouldn't mind muting your microphone. Gwen, so happy to have you here. And it looks like everybody else looks like they're muted, and it sounds like we've got a good backdrop. Okay, so actually we can mute people's microphones. Okay. Okay. Oops. All right, so welcome. My name is Matheson Westlake, and I am the librarian at Holland Free Public Library. And we're so pleased that you could join us tonight. We're at a very busy and exciting time in the library lately. We've been having book sales all month. We have one more book sale remaining. That's going to be coming up on Halloween this Saturday. So if you have a little time, 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m., got some great bargains on books.
And one thing, they have a huge collection of really nice World War II books, like hundreds, and they're in mint condition to be had for very cheap.
Yes, anyone who is a history fan, you will find plenty to choose from. And we even have a box of Jerseyana, so very local history books available, bestsellers, you get the picture. We've also been having we've been having outdoor story times. Those are coming to a close, with the final one being Saturday, and some craft programs for the kids too. And our membership season is right around the corner, so we'll be mailing out those annual requests for people who love the Holland Library to become a member. And that just means a little donation and patting yourself on the back, and it's free to everybody. You don't need to be a member to walk in the door. But you've all come here tonight for a program, a talk by Rick Epstein. Here he is. If you don't know, he's my dad. That's why we're in the same house and we're not wearing masks. And he does local history talks. Let me go here. Oh, there he is. Here's Rick, tour guide in Frenchtown. And I'll turn it over now to him. And anytime you like, Dad, you can just let me know when it's time to advance to the next slide.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to tell you about the triple axe murder that happened in Holland Township. The way I found out about it, I was editor of the Delaware Valley News in Frenchtown from 1977 until 1984. And I thought I was pretty well versed in Frenchtown history by 1980. I was mistaken. But anyway, there was a guy named Clarence Parker who grew up in Mount Pleasant and lived there for many years. And he was turning 100. So I sent my reporter, Peter Zernite, out to interview him. And Clarence Parker, sometimes you go to interview a 100-year-old person and pretty much they didn't do much with their 100 years, nothing of exciting interest to a newspaper. But Peter came back wide-eyed and excited because Clarence Parker had had an interesting life, and he had been a sheriff's deputy for Hunterdon County. And Peter asked him, what was the most exciting thing in your law enforcement career? And he said, well, it would have to be moving the bodies away from the burning house. And Peter said, what? And the and he said, well, 1917, there was a triple axe murder in Mount Pleasant. And so Peter got some more information about that. And then I went to the archives. In those days, we had big volumes of the Frenchtown Star in our closet. And sure enough, I pawed through 1917 and found the story that I'm about to tell you. So, sure. So anyhow, in May of 1917, there was a Holland Township farmer. His name was William Queen. He was 61 years old, and he had been sick, and he could not keep up with his farm work. And his brother was a retired judge, and for some reason, he was hanging around a courtroom in Jersey City when a Lithuanian immigrant was being convicted of carrying a concealed weapon. And the guy was Lithuanian, and the Americanization of his name was Paul Maywood. I think his last name was Maywern, but he went by several different names, but just to make it easy on myself, I'm just going to call him Maywood. Anyway, he was kind of a thug. He was 28 years old. He was 5'4", weighed 160 pounds, had broad shoulders, bow legs, and a scar across his nose. And I think it was the broad shoulders that caused what?
Oh, looks like we had someone joining the meeting. We'll just make sure that everyone is mics are muted.
Okay.
Pardon this brief interruption. Let me just make sure we're all on the same page.
But my momentum.
Oh, sorry, Dad. Okay.
I was just rolling.
Oh, back to you.
Okay. So he had broad shoulders, bow legs, kind of burly in a short sort of way. But I think it was the broad shoulders that John Queen said, that is the guy to help my brother on his farm. So he, I think it was the Old Boy Network. He got the judge to put him on probation, and he took Paul Maywood out to Mount Pleasant. Now I'll tell you where the farm was. Map, please.
Oh.
There we go. I'm like 90% sure that right where the red star is where it is. That's when you take the Milford Mount Pleasant Road away from Milford, and right you come to that T intersection, and Alexandria Park is right across the street. But if you look right to your left, there's just sort of trees and things. There's no farm there anymore. But I believe that's where it was, where that big red star is. So anyhow, okay, you can put it back to me.
Oh.
Okay, so anyhow, they shouldn't just stare at the map all this time.
All right. Oh, don't look, everyone. Okay, sorry about this. Not so slick. There we go.
That's what they're seeing.
Would you like it?
I want them to see me talking.
Okay, sorry.
At least I'm alive.
Okay,
you could tell we've rehearsed this really well. This is not how Scott Johnson conducts his fifth grade talks.
Sorry, I didn't know. To be honest, I'm sorry. We're just gonna have to keep Dad as a thumbnail.
Okay. So anyhow, living on the farm, on the Queen farm, was William Queen, who we talked about. He's 61. His wife, Emma, was 52. And they had a grown daughter named Eleanor, who's 24. And she was a teacher in Mount Joy, in the Mount Joy school. And she was engaged to a Mr. Bellis. Okay. So anyhow, um, Paul Maywood did not make a good impression on the boss. In fact, William Queen took an immediate dislike to him, but he decided to try him for a few days because he really needed the help. According to the Frenchtown Star, here's what they wrote. The Paul Maywood talked rather brokenly and grew sullen and morose as the days went by, frequently swearing even in the presence of the women folk when he was ordered to do different tasks. Now, this is not what you look for in an employee, but he needed him, and he stayed. Now, he was there just under a month until the fateful day came along. It was June 7th. And well, there's no good witnesses to what happened, but here's how they pieced it together. Mr. Queen decided that he had had it with Maywood, and he either scolded him or he fired him. We don't really know. And if Paul Maywood went away, he just went and hid in the woods for a while. Okay, because at about 10:30 at night, he set fire to the house and the barn. And Mr. Queen heard, he came out of the house. Either Maywood called him, or he smelled smoke, or he heard the crackling of the timbers. Anyway, he came out, and Paul Maywood had an axe, and he chopped him on the head and face. 3 strokes, killed him. There was probably a lot of yelling, screaming. Then Mrs. Queen came out, and he chopped her a couple of times on the head, killing her. Now the house was really burning. Well, the Queens were fully dressed. They hadn't gone to bed for the night, but Eleanor had. She came out in her night clothes and a kimono, of all things. And she had hastily packed her bag because she knew by then the house was on fire, because she had a purse with $400 in it, which was a lot of dough in those days. And her clothes may have caught fire when she was running out, but anyway, she was chopped, and she was very close to the house, and her body was so badly burned that she would have died from that, even if she hadn't been hit with the axe. So Maywood just ran off into the woods. Later, they would later figure out that he ran north toward the Musconetcong River. So meanwhile, the fire was, lighting up the sky. It was now 11 o'clock, and someone saw the fire and started ringing the church bell. That's the Alexandria Presbyterian Church nearby Mount Pleasant. And a guy named Leroy Krevling, who was a farmer nearby, he fired his pistol in the air several times just to raise the alarm. And remember Clarence Parker, the guy who was the sheriff's deputy, and so he has a kind of a first responder responsibility. So he told Peter Zernite, "When I heard that church bell, I got out of bed like as if I was shot out of a cannon." He rushed to the farm, and there he found 2 men in the barnyard there, staring speechless at the 3 bodies, one of which was on fire. The nightgown, Eleanor's nightgown, was burning, and they thought the house would collapse onto the bodies. So the 3 of them carried the bodies away from the fire, and it made Parker told Peter Zernite, blood was all over our shoes and trousers. It was the worst thing I ever had to do. It's something I'll never forget, never. And the Frenchtown Star describing the scene, they laid it on a little thick, but they said, so just outside the house, the flames were lighting up the scene. And the Star wrote, it was a ghastly sight, the innocent faces of those helpless ones, making the stoutest hearts quail and causing men as well as women to shed tears over a scene that seemed too terrible to be true. Far removed from help, they all three perished with only the sight of the fiendish work left to tell what had been enacted. The house burned up, the barn and the wagon shed burned up. 3 horses died in the barn. The cows escaped and they were okay. And the chickens survived too. Yeah, show the chickens. Do you have the chickens?
Mhm.
One more. There we go. See, this is one of the burned buildings, and you can see, that's why I know the chickens survived, because there's 2 of them. You can see the place was totally destroyed. So what of our friend, Mr. Maywood? He ran off into the woods. It took 4 days to find him. There were detectives looking for him, the sheriff and the deputies were looking for him, and a bunch of volunteers, everybody was out looking for him. And it wasn't until on Sunday night, a farmer came into the Gibson House Hotel. That was in Milford, and that's where the bank drive-through thing is on Bridge Street. That used to be a big hotel called the Gibson House. Anyway, a farmer came in and he said that he had seen someone had been in his barn, and he'd seen his dog chasing a man into the woods. And he mentioned that to the bartender, and the farm was up toward the Musconetcong River. So the bartender, he waited like 12 hours, and then when a detective came in at Sunday noon, he said, oh, by the way, the guy you're looking for is probably up near the Musconetcong River. Interestingly enough, the newspaper coverage doesn't refer to the Musconetcong as a river. They call it Musconetcong Creek, which I thought was kind of an interesting sidelight. I think it at some point got upgraded, kind of the way Rider College became Rider University. They upgraded the Musconetcong Creek into a river, and we're all glad of that, I'm sure. So anyway, so the word was spread to the sheriff and all the people who were in the search parties. They got word, go up to the Musconetcong River. Meanwhile, there were a couple of guys fishing in the Musconetcong, and their names were Robert Lippincott and Caleb Agnast. And they found Paul Maywood. They were startled by the sight of a man emerging from the woods bareheaded and carrying an axe. The account in the Hunterdon Republican really adds some more fashion details. They said he was without a collar and cravat. Imagine that, running off into the woods without your cravat. So anyway, those 2 guys, he was still carrying the axe. Can you believe it? Anyway, those 2 guys ran for help. They were not going to take him down by themselves. All they had was fishing poles. So they went to the Warren Glen paper mill looking for support. And so those guys came out right about the same time. The people from Milford who got the word from the bartender, they were headed in that direction anyway. And the 2 parties got together and kind of cornered Maywood. And he was like in the middle of this huge crowd waving his axe. And so a couple of guys shot him a bit. Earl Andrews and William Dilly, one with a shotgun, one with a pistol, I guess, or a rifle. It was a bullet. Here's the description in the Hunterdon Republican. of the situation. He had with him an axe with a broken handle, which he flourished and with which he sought to keep the crowd from taking him. Before he was arrested, he was shot twice, once with a shotgun, once with a revolver. Neither shot was very serious. I'm sure he took it seriously. Um, and then the crowd jumped in and took the fight out of him with fists and feet. And according to the newspaper, the crowd, and they gave the crowd as two estimates I read. One was 250 people converged around this guy, and another estimate was 300, which sounds high. But from my newspaper experience, I found that the best way to estimate a crowd is to be the only one making an estimate. But anyway, there are a lot of people. And according to the newspaper, some of the people, they were pounding on him and they wanted to hang him right then and there because the queens were well thought of and everyone was concerned. But anyway, they broke it up and they got Maywood and they took him to Flemington, to the jail. And they kind of did some quick surgery. They took out some shotgun pellets, and but he had been 4 days in the woods, and he was in critical condition from his wounds and from hunger. The Milford Leader describes him. Caught red-handed, looking more like a human vulture than a man after a 4-day lease of his worthless life, Paul Maywood is behind bars, and the good people of this and surrounding communities are resting easier. Maywood's English wasn't good, but he did manage to tell the authorities that he'd been fired on June 7th at about 6 p.m., and he left the farm. And he said he didn't know anything about any murders. So the funeral for the Queen family was held the same day that he was caught. It was 4 days after the killing. And it was at the Mount Pleasant Church, and the crowd was estimated at 1,000 to 1,500 people at the church. Now I can show the picture of the cars parked.
Okay, sorry.
We'll have to practice this for next time.
Well, I thought they would be in the right order since we set that up.
Yep. Okay, so anyway, this is a picture of some of the cars that came to the funeral. And anyhow, the Queens were buried in the Mount Pleasant Cemetery, which is right across from the church. And there we go. They got a nice big monument, and there's the individual gravestones. Their coffins were all laid in a single grave. So interesting detail. And Maywood was tried for the murder of William Queen in Flemington in the courthouse, the same courtroom the Lindbergh trial would take place in 1935, and with the same judge, Thomas Trenchard. And the prosecutor was a Frenchtown guy. He was Harry Abel, who was an attorney in Frenchtown. He was the son of a Frenchtown barber on Bridge Street, and he too had been a barber in his younger days, but he was then a lawyer and the county prosecutor. And another Frenchtown personage took a part in the situation. He did the post-mortem on the bodies, and that was Dr. Frank Grimm. Frank Grimm later became mayor, but he was a physician in Frenchtown. And if you've been to Frenchtown and seen the Doughboy World War I statue in front of the Frenchtown School, Dr. Grimm, this is a digression, but worthwhile, I think. Anyway, he was the driving force between collecting the money and getting the statue put there in front of the school. So that was his claim to fame. He testified in court that the wounds were consistent with an axe. And now Harry Abel, he won the case. They tried him for the murder of William Queen first, figuring that if he was acquitted of that, then they could try him for Mrs. Queen's murder. and then Eleanor. So they would, they would have 3 shots at convicting him. But he won the case. He got a conviction, and I think any one of us here could have tried that case. I mean, the dude was holding a bloody axe when they caught him. So he never admitted his guilt, though. So anyhow, during the trial, the Republican said Maywood maintained an indifferent or stolid demeanor for the most part, except now and then he would break out into a laugh for which there seemed to be no reason. So he was probably quiet because he didn't understand what anybody was saying. But as for the laughter, I don't know. Maybe he had mental issues. I don't know. So anyway, he was electrocuted in Trenton. And interestingly enough, things move fast. The murder was in June. The trial was in July. The execution was in August. They moved fast. So anyway, now the last, there are the headstones of the family, and if someone were in the cemetery, the only thing they might notice is that they all died the same day of the same year, and they might wonder at that. So anyway, that's all I got.
All right.
Maybe it wasn't enough. It was fast.
I think that was just great, and we're gonna invite people now to unmute, and we can have a little conversation if anybody wants to ask any questions about. I'm unmuting everyone. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions if you want to talk about local history. Anything you might like. If you are wondering how to unmute your microphone, you can find the picture of the microphone, just click on it. So
I have a quick question, if I may.
Sure.
I feel like I might have missed a little piece early on that isn't all that important to the story, but it's from our corner of Holland.
Mm-hmm.
Teacher in Mountjoy, I missed. Was that Eleanor? Was Eleanor the teacher in Mountjoy?
Yeah, Eleanor Queen. She was unmarried.
Rick, where was the school?
It's that brick building at the end of the road.
I don't know. I might be able to, I think on the Holland History Facebook page, if you scroll way down, they have a series of pictures clipped out of the 1950s Del Valle News of various schoolhouses. And I think one of those pictures is of the Mountjoy School.
Yeah, I can actually answer that. It's a brick building on the end of Mountjoy Road, right before you hit 627 on the right.
That would probably
It's now a residence.
It's stone, it's not brick.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Stone, yes.
I don't know where exactly along the river they had the showdown with him when they caught him. Maybe in your backyard.
I think it was just south of where 519 hits 627 there in Warren Glen. Right below that, there used to be a bridge. That bridge that's there now was a little bit farther south because the end of Dennis Road went straight down and crossed the Musconetcong. And I think that's the area where it was.
Oh, that would make sense. One account described it as being a swampy area. And they did mention a bridge in one of the accounts. And that would account for why they were near the paper mill, right? That's the Warren Glen Bridge, right?
That is, yeah.
Yeah.
are there any local history buffs who want to throw out a wild card type of question? If it's about Frenchtown in particular, you're likely to get a good answer.
I do have a question if you would take it, sir.
Sure.
I live in Pittstown.
No, Everettstown.
Well, Pittstown, Everettstown. I was wondering if
You got to pick one.
I'm picking Pittstown then because that's what my address is.
Everettstown on Mill Street.
Everettstown on Mill Street.
You're in the
And
heart of downtown Everettstown. You kidding me?
do you
We're
know?
in the church.
Do you know any? We're in the church. Do you know anything about the local history of Everettstown or Pittstown or
Well,
whatever?
I know
boyfriend
that
call it?
I know that there was a church that was moved onto Mill Street. Is that the building you live in?
Yes, sir.
That's about all I know.
Oh, okay. They moved it. All right, cool.
Yeah, it was it was kind of where the current church is, I believe. And they used to move buildings a lot in the old days.
Did they move it from Pittstown?
No, Pittstown is not. The only reason you think you live in Pittstown is because the U.S. Postal Service decided that we've got a guy from Pittstown going out that way, and let's give him your mail.
But is there is Everettstown kind of like known for something, or?
Well, Lester D. Wilson School and a church.
Was there
I'm
a guy
sorry?
named Everett?
I guess I'm not a Everettstown expert.
Okay. Well, there you go. a little tiny.
Is there any vestige of the church that you live in? Can you tell it?
What do you mean? What do you mean by vestige?
I don't know. An altar?
No, there's no altar. I mean, I sit outside from my front porch and speak to the prior. And we have a general store next to us that's not built down. The old mill's down the street.
Yeah,
So-
that is that general store. Is that? Does anybody live in there still? I think that.
No, I just met the owners and they're actually gonna be redoing it. They just sold it.
Really, they're going to save it? Do you think?
Yep.
Wow,
They're gonna restore it.
That's going to be a job.
Yeah, well, it's a job. I walked in there, trust me.
Has anyone here ever taken the walking tour of Frenchtown or of the cemetery? Did that bring anybody here to this program?
That's what I was gonna ask about. When is the next walking tour of Frenchtown? Because I'd like to learn a lot more about it.
Whenever you want it. With the pandemic, I only do like 2 or 3 people at a time. So it's
okay.
pretty much when you want to do it. I'm in school until 3:30, but the weekends are free and cost $15 a head. And I do it when you want.
All right.
So
how convenient. Does anybody here follow Rick's blog or his postings on Facebook?
Mm-hmm.
Anybody have like a favorite story?
Renee.
Renee, did you have a story that you liked that showed up on the blog?
My awareness of the blog is fairly recent, so I'm not sure that I can pick out a certain thing, but I did have a question for you, Rick.
Sure.
Have you written about Frenchtown and the 1918 pandemic?
A little bit. I know that it really was claiming lives in Frenchtown in October of 1918. There were like 5 people in Frenchtown who died of it, including a couple that ran, where the Cocina del Sol is under the Gem building. Well, that was the Oyster Bay restaurant, and a couple who ran it, they both died of the flu within a week of each other. But yeah, there was a body count in town from that one.
And the same for, do you know about Milford or any other local?
School was only closed for 3 weeks.
Ah.
For the pandemic. No, I don't know what Milford was doing.
Yeah. I previously worked at TCNJ, and the records showed that it was then the state normal school of Trenton or New Jersey or something like that. And they were closed for 3 weeks.
I have some bad news for you. Eleanor, who got killed
Yes.
in the murders, she was one of your alumni.
Oh, wow.
She went to
So that means
she
the
went to
college
Trenton-
can do a
Trenton.
story.
Trenton Normal School, yeah.
Wow. And when would she have graduated college?
Well, what was she, 22? She was 22, and she was a graduate of Phillipsburg High School, and then she went to Trenton Normal School. So,
Okay. Interesting. You know who else is an alum of the normal school?
who?
The parents of Anthony Alito. What's his first name on the Supreme Court?
Samuel Alito.
Samuel. Both his parents, mom and dad, went to the normal school.
Well, okay.
And he inquired as to whether we had any school records about his parents once.
He wanted to find out what kind of grades they got.
Yeah, and the school had them. They were able to supply everything and more. And it was back in the day where somebody was actually writing notes about individual students. So it was kind of like a gold mine for him.
Oh, things like Ricky has such potential, as if only he learned to shut up and be serious, that kind of thing.
Excellent posture.
Right.
Well, that's a fun little trivia. I guess we should wind it up. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and you can always learn more about local history, particularly Frenchtown, by following Rick on Facebook. And as he mentioned, the tours are very small now, but if you'd like to schedule a date, you can be in touch.
I'm better on the tours because I've told the stories 100 times.
It went great.
Oh,
it was
okay,
good.
okay.
I enjoyed it very much. And I can tell from the smile on Scott's face, he agrees. All right, everyone.
I gotta show Scott something.
You're getting 2 thumbs up over here in Mount Joy.
Can you see my window where I have all the questions I'm wondering about?
Oh, wow.
That's great.
This is excellent. I love this idea.
Whenever there's something I don't know about Frenchtown that I wish I knew, I write down the year and I put it on that window.
Wow, this is a great idea.
Every once in a while, I get to take one of them down because I found something out.
Right.
Well, that's cool to see, the process of a local historian. It's sort of like a ongoing detective story, just history itself being a mystery.
Yeah, here's where I keep track of. These are the buildings on Bridge Street where I keep track of what happened in them when.
That's great.
Dad, show the painting.
Oh. This is a 1935 painting of Frenchtown. That's the first editor of the Delaware Valley News, Jerry Zick. And you recognize that row of buildings at the head of Bridge Street.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you again, everyone. And thanks for coming to a Holland Library program.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll see you again in the future. Don't forget, book sale this Saturday, 10:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m.
Especially if you're planning to refight World War II, this is the place for you.
I need to.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Matheson.
Okay. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.